You are listening to the Enormocast.
You smell that? The aroma of crisp Mountain Dew on living cowhide? That dusky scent only means one thing. That's right, September is upon us. Getting up early to mend them fences all summer's about to pay off when them crisp temps let you pull down on holes smaller than a whisker on a tadpole. Dime Edge is going to feel like 10 pesos. They're significantly larger, look it up. And as you gallop into September with a twinkle in your eye and a spur in your buttocks, let Black Diamond be your trusty steed. They got all you need for pebble wrestling, sport climbing, and of course the best traditional climbing protection this old cowpoke's ever seen. If you ain't riding the range with a saddlebag full of Camelots, well son, you ain't cowboy, or cowgirl, or cowperson. You get my meaning. So when it comes to poking cows, well, that's your business. But as far as climbing goes, nobody has you covered head to toe like Black Diamond. Check them out at blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop. And though I might have gone too far this time, at the moment, Black Diamond is still a proud sponsor of the Enormocast.
We gotta get
Listen, where are you playing in town? Are you playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
big
big
house. We
place
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000
seats?
We really should run.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enorma at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is September 7th, about 9:30 p.m. in Colorado, and this is episode 227 of the Enormocast, a conversation with Jordan Cannon. Return guest, three-time guest, I believe, Jordan Cannon. I think Jordan was on by himself, and then he was on with Mark Hudon, and now he's back. Plus a couple of episodes at the Runout, a really important episode at the Runout, actually, the other podcast. So Jordan Cannon is a big part of my life. And guess what? This is one of the climbiest podcasts I've done in a really long time. We're talking about climbing. We're talking a lot about climbing Golden Gate on El Cap, but in context of Jordan's whole career. And that's one thing I love about Jordan is that the dude is psyched to climb. He's psyched about everything climbing. He's psyched about the history of climbing. He's psyched about the ethics of climbing. He's psyched about climbing on granite. He's psyched about sport climbing, big route climbing, speed climbing. Not so much the big alpine climbing. But he's young. There's time. I don't see it happening, but I could be wrong. And this one's been sitting in the hopper for a while. I've been having trouble getting it out for various life reasons. And I actually was about to put it out when Stacey Bear got in touch with me about Afghanistan, which is what the last episode was about. And I hope you guys listen to that one, because even if the Afghanistan thing seems too political, too crazy, too sad in a lot of ways, we talk a lot more than just about Afghanistan and that. And to be honest with you, Stacey Bear is a breath of fresh air, a breath of humanity. And the mic is always on for whatever he wants to talk about here at the Enormocast. So, yeah, hope you check that one out. But here we are, back to climbing, hardcore climbing podcast. And as an introduction to Jordan, if you haven't heard him on the cast before, young climber, originally from South Carolina, but kind of a California climber now, for sure, associated with Yosemite and with the east side and with places like that. He's kind of interesting because he's a young kid, he's, I don't know how old he is now, he's in his late 20s actually, but you know how I feel about people that age, kids, all of them. Anyway, kind of got famous in the last few years for having this interesting partnership with Mark Hudon, a Yosemite climber from the 70s who's been on the show another time with his longtime partner, Max Jones, were early free climbers on El Cap back in the day. But Jordan's just sort of the consummate young trad climber, consummate young big wall climber, and also a pretty consummate professional climber. He's pursued it pretty doggedly and unabashedly, becoming, a professional climber, what that means, what it takes, what it involves. And to that end, before we get to the interview, Jordan wanted me to mention that he's basically going to be at every single Craggin Classic that the AAC is putting on this fall. And I think I mean that literally. I've been to a fair few Craggin Classics over the years. Nice events that the AAC puts on, a lot of education going on in those. And they're usually a lot kind of more laid back than your full-blown climbing festival, which can appeal to a lot of folks. That sort of more chill, smaller community vibe. So check out the Craggin Classics. You can find all that information at the American Alpine Club's websites, like americanalpineclub.org/Craggin Classic or something like that. Anyway, you know how to use Google. But yeah, Jordan's going to be at those, pretty much all of them, I think he said. He's going to get pissed that I don't know specifically that, but you get it. Google him, find out where he's going to be. Email him, just get in touch. Anyhow, sitting in the van in Rifle with Jordan Cannon. Jordan's become a friend over the years since I first interviewed him, and just a real genuine good dude and great fucking climber. Oh, and one other thing. I recently visited the La Sportiva factory in the mountains of Italy, and, well, something really strange, sort of scary and exciting happened. I'll let you listen in. Hey, Sportiva, what are you doing over there? Wait a minute. You're not messing with the TC Pro, are you? Wait, you're trying to make them better? Come on, let's not get crazy. Just put the shoes down, walk away. We'll have another espresso and talk about this, amico. The TC Pro is pretty much perfect as is. A pair of those free-soled El Cap, for Pete's sake. Let's not forget that little Tommy Caldwell designed those with a box of Crayolas and some glitter glue, while most of us were still wondering why our downturned shoes wouldn't smear for merda. Ascoltami, fratello. The off-width maniacs are going to lose it when you change their go-to shoe. And let me tell you, you don't want to mess with those people. They're loco. Oh, wait. You're telling me Tommy and Alex have suggested some changes to make them better? Well, if those guys are down, I guess I can't complain too much. Go ahead and see what you can do. And let us know when we can check out the new improved TC Pro at Sportiva.com or try them on at our favorite local shop. But look here, Sportiva. You start futzing with those Miras, and it's pistols at dawn. Capiche?
You guys are so dialed.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I need a better podcast voice.
Well, you don't have to change your voice.
Okay.
I got a nice compliment from John Long.
I know. That's a pretty good compliment.
The dip in the
Although he said the same thing to Stephen Dimmitt.
All right, forget it then.
I have to say, I appreciate, I don't know if it was a Pacifico, but when we topped out Mount Watkins and our friend Drew Smith was the first and only time I've seen Jesus was Drew Smith walking to us with pizza and beer.
On top of Watkins?
Yeah, on top of Mount Watkins.
Nice.
I don't think it was Pacifico. I think it was some other Mexican beer.
Well, when it's hot out and you're actually thirsty, in my opinion, there's no substitute for Mexican beers for cervezas.
Because they actually feel refreshing.
If they're cold enough, they feel refreshing. Drew Smith. How long have you known Drew?
Boy, I don't know. I think ever since my first real season in Yosemite, probably 2016. And it was great because I hadn't seen Drew or climbed with him in years, and so it was fun to catch up with him and then, have him join us on the summit at the end of that long day with his girlfriend Ree, who's awesome, and brought us pizza and beer. It was amazing.
Who'd you climb that with?
Scott Bennett.
Oh, right, Scott.
Do you know Scott?
Yeah, I know Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great. You should have him on the show.
Yeah, we've talked about it.
He's got a lot of good stories.
Yeah, he kind of like, I I don't know. He seems like he has sort of a on and off public persona.
Yeah, totally.
You know, like,
which
you
I
hear
kind
about
of,
something and then he
like his vibe
disappears
for that reason.
right.
Yeah, and he's done a lot too. Pretty good writer. Whenever he does something significant, he generally comes out with a pretty good blog post.
Mm-hmm.
He did a good one about the triple as well.
Right.
But that's who I'm actually going to climb with this weekend.
Okay. Where are you going?
Rocky Mountain.
All right.
Yeah. He wants to. I've never climbed there before. He's climbed there a bunch, and yeah, we just had so much fun climbing the triple together. And really, the kind of first partner I have where I feel like I can, go after a lot of the bigger goals I may have dreamed up, and so if he comes up with something and pitches me his idea, even if I have no idea what it is, like I'm gonna say yes because I know Scott has a taste for that kind of thing, and if we team up, it's gonna be rad. So
you're using Yosemite speak, the triple.
Yeah.
What is it exactly, and what are the rules?
Dude, it's the triple. It's the Yosemite Triple Crown. It's absurd with the rules and everything. But I like how Timmy O'Neill describes it. He's like, when you're eating grade 6s for breakfast, like you got to have a 3-course meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Which in the Yosemite speak, the Triple Crown is El Cap, Half Dome, and Mount Watkins.
Okay.
In a day, and in a day can either be defined by an arbitrary 24-hour window or an actual 24-hour day. 12 a.m. Right? Yeah, to 12 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah. Which that's what we went for. Each one kind of has their own challenges.
So what do you mean by that? Like you started at midnight?
Yeah, we started at midnight, whereas in the past, for something like Golden Gate in a day or whatever, actually I think I started at midnight for that also. But sometimes you start at 5 a.m. or sometimes you start at 7 p.m. and climb through the night or whatever. So it really just depends on how you want to approach it, but 24 hours is like the arbitrary goal that we go for, see how much climbing you can do in a single day.
Yeah, and it's by hook or by crook.
Yeah. Not free climbing, which some people get confused, but not entirely aid climbing. It's by any means climbing, which to climb that 7,000 feet of Yosemite granite in a day, most of it has to be free climbing. Otherwise,
just to move fast.
Yeah, to move fast enough.
Right.
But then, that's only efficient to a point where if you're trying to free climb something harder, sometimes it's easier to just go into aid mode.
So you're just pulling through, grabbing stuff, whatever. Had you tried it before, or was it a first time?
No, it was the first time. Kind of a natural progression in the Yosemite link-up game if you're into that kind of thing. Alex Honnold and I climbed the nose and Half Dome in a day in 2017, which, that's like the classic link-up that Croft and Backer did in 87 or whatever. No, I think that was the first time anybody ever climbed 2 grade 6s in a day.
Right.
And so that was game changing at the time, upping the ante from, John Long and Billy climbing and Bridwell climbing the nose in a day. So yeah, it's kind of just the next step after that link up. So Alex and I did that in 2017, and you look over at Watkins and you're like, dude, that's the next one. And of course, Alex had already soloed the triple and free climbed it with Tommy, which is insane.
I couldn't remember if they had freed them all.
Yeah, they had in 2012, which is the year I graduated high school.
Right.
I mean, I didn't learn about it till years later, but to this day, especially after having climbed it not free, like I said, we maybe freed 80% of it.
Right.
I mean, I think it's one of the most badass feats of free climbing, at least in Yosemite, that is probably largely misunderstood, or I just think it's hard for people to understand like what that means.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you on that, because I mean, it's just, like those two guys are just operating this place where they've done so much rad shit that it's like they've sort of diluted their own reputation, right? You're just like, of course they did.
Right, whenever they do something new and big, you're just like, just Alex and Tommy out there being superheroes. It's hard for other people to understand unless it's, done by somebody else that's maybe seen more as normal or human.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible for sure. Just banging away on all those finger locks and all those smears and on your feet and Just
dude.
yeah.
I'm so envious of their partnership because they're both superheroes in their own right, and the fact that they get to team up and do the raddest things together. I mean, that doesn't happen. You know? Yeah. Scott right now is kind of like my equivalent partner that I can do that kind of stuff with, and yeah, it's hard to find those kind of partnerships, but when they come together, rad things happen.
What else has been going on? Shit, when was the last time we've been trying to figure this out tonight? So
yeah.
You came on the Enormocast 4 or 5 years ago. It was at the trade show. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it had to be 2016.
Right.
Because that would have been the year I graduated college and my first time going to the OR show, I think.
And I was just like thinking about it. I'm like, why the fuck did I even want to talk to you?
If you listen to it again, I believe I asked you the same question.
Because I'm like, what the fuck? Beginning. What had he done at that point?
I climbed the free rider. That's it.
Yeah.
I think. And now everybody's climbing the free rider. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw this. Well, I discovered you. That's what it comes down to.
Thank you, Chris.
I fully discovered you, bro. You're welcome.
You're my scouting agent.
I don't know. It was just one of those things, and I like clued into something you were doing on Instagram or whatever. You're really good at the social media, actually.
Thanks. You know how I am good at it?
Because you're 20-something. How old are you now?
27.
Okay.
No, I try not to be good at it.
And then
I try not to put too much thought in that kind of stuff, you know?
Well, maybe that's it, right? The authenticity, but there is, you're good at keeping up with it.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
So it's there.
Yeah. I realize that's the age we live in, and
right.
As part of like my position now as an athlete is to, be current, and yeah. So I try and interact in a way that feels fun and authentic to me. But
well, the cool thing, you were we met at the OR to do the interview, Outdoor Retailer, which is actually apparently happening.
Yeah,
right
I was
now
about
or
to mention.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So
everybody's just like,
for that
what?
very reason, I think we're exactly almost 5 years because it happens next week.
You were the classic dude there hustling, had a couple things on your resume, bright smile.
Yeah. Boy, looking back at that, I was like, it's hard to imagine or remember what exactly I was thinking.
No, it was what you need to do.
Yeah, I guess.
And that's just look, it's the thing, it's the key to it all is that, and we've talked about this, I know a lot, but what does it mean? How do you get sponsored? What does it mean to be sponsored? It's always been this a little bit opaque thing to people who aren't in the business, and it really has always come down to hustling and who's going to hustle. Everybody's like, well, that guy's sponsored, but I know these guys that live in my town that climb way harder than him, and it's like, well, yeah, but they don't hustle.
Yeah.
And it's always about the hustle.
I feel like I should hop on my soapbox about that for a second, because a lot of people think that things are just handed to you. Mm-hmm. And at least in my experience, yeah, and unless you're somebody, but even unless you're somebody like Alex or Tommy or Chris Sharma or Andra, sure, things, when you're performing at that level, things might be given to you a little bit easier. But even then, they have to ask for way more than people are aware of.
Right.
And yeah, so for myself, the only sponsorship out of the ones that I have that I didn't ask for myself was Arc'teryx. And that blew my mind when they were came to me, I was like, you what?
They heard the Enormocast, dude.
Yeah, he did actually. He was like, "Oh, I was my manager, Justin." Yeah.
All right.
Upon our first call, he's like, "Oh, I was just."
Cut.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll take the last third of this van. Well, I want that part of it.
But yeah, so any young climber out there wondering how to make it, nothing is handed to you. You have to work hard for it and ask for it, and be willing to go out there and put yourself out there.
Yeah, totally. And that's what you were doing at that show. You were going to meetings and trying to make your potential seem, what it was. But the thing is you weren't full of shit, because in the 5 years since then, you've become a very consummate professional, in my opinion.
Thank you.
The social media thing, I know when we get on that, we can sound like we're dissing it, but I wasn't. It's like you're good at it. It's like
well, and that's just a small part of it too. You know that also,
but it's a piece of it.
Yeah,
So in the years since we talked last time, which we figured out was about 5 years ago, at the OR show, you spent a lot of time in Yosemite, seasons after seasons in Yosemite. And the thing I want to actually get into, sort of climber to climber, is how that's possible. Because I don't...
How what's possible?
Just
climbing in Yosemite?
Just living in Yosemite. And like, stuff has changed so much since I was there.
Yeah.
And actually, I was there 2 years ago or whatever when we went up to Golden Gate. But we were basically like in Yosemite for a day, and then we were on the wall, and then we left the night we came down because we watched the man come and clean out the meadow, like right when we got to our car that night after topping out,
busting,
going down, wrapping, carrying all our shit out. We got out like 10:30 at night, and we were about to be like, okay, well, let's just crash here, and we watched them just. It was like Memorial Day, and so they were like cleaning it out. Like it was cleaning night.
They do that a few times a season.
Yeah, and so we were like, all right, we got to get out of here. So then we had to drive our asses up over Tioga Pass and like deliriously drove finally out of the park on the other side.
To the east side. That's a long drive.
Oh, it was heinous, dude.
Wow.
And then we threw our bags out. We literally got out of the park and then just like pulled off somewhere, threw our bags out, and then it started to rain.
Boy.
And the van was all filled with shit, so it was like we had to dump everything out. That was brutal.
What an epic end to an already epic climb.
It was super. I mean, it was like honestly like a 17-hour day. The most dangerous thing we did all day was to be driving.
Oh, yeah.
Delirious.
Driving that sleep deprived?
Yeah, and hauling ass, too.
Dude, more dangerous than driving drunk, really. But we knew the next day
was Friday of Memorial Day weekend, and we knew we'd just like, everybody was like, you got to get out of here before it, like,
before it blows up.
Bumper.
I mean, so to answer your question, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I tell everybody that I hate Yosemite unless I'm rock climbing.
Right.
Because when you're on the walls, you're really not having to deal with a whole lot.
Right.
Other than maybe some other climbers. But all the other times in between, when you're on the valley floor and when you're driving the loop and you're looking for parking, you're trying to figure out where to camp, and you're dealing with tourists and you're trying to go to the village store and get some food, like, it sucks, dude. It sucks. But my willingness to put up with all of those things, I think, is just a testament to how good the climbing is. If the climbing wasn't that good, I wouldn't bother.
Right.
But it's also, I really like climbing history, and there's so much history in Yosemite climbing, and all of my biggest like climbing heroes have all been significant Yosemite climbers, and so, and I'm very aware of how the generations have changed and how, each one has different rules and regulations and how it's essentially gotten more strict. But I just figure if I want to be a Yosemite player, and this is the generation I'm in, and this is the state of the rules and regulations in the park, if you want to play the game, you just have to deal with it.
Well, but I want to know about the game.
Okay,
because game. I mean, maybe these are secrets to be revealed, and like,
no, not really.
But like, I just let's go back again. So in the years that I was there, it was chill. Like, you couldn't just flat out sleep in the open, and every once in a while they would like sweep through Camp 4 in the middle of the night and check your passes, which it was like kind of wild, like stormtrooper kind of crap.
Yeah.
We didn't even have bear boxes in the meadow because the bears just hadn't gotten that bold. Like, you just left your food in your car. And so, there was all these options, but it was still this game. The caves were still there and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And now I just imagine like these herds of vans like trying to find their places to like be, outside the gates or whatever. Like where do you sleep? Like, what do you do with your van? Like, how does it work?
So the example that I followed was Alex Honnold in Valley Uprising. He talks about, to play by the rules, he drives outside the park every night, and they have a shot of him, sleeping at the El Portal entrance.
Yeah,
and
but
a bunch of cars
haven't they
driving
shut
by.
all that shit down too?
Well, so that's the thing, is that Alex blew that up. Alex blew that up for everybody, because now you go to El Portal, vans lining both sides of the roads.
Oh, I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I was one of those vans for a number of years, and I saw it get incrementally more crowded. But then that also just gets really old driving completely out of the park. It's like a half-hour drive one way, so you're driving an hour a day just to commute to the climbing, which maybe that's not a big deal. A lot of people commute to work. So that's basically one option, is to drive outside of the park, which there's 3 park entrances, and if you're in Yosemite, you can really only drive out of 2 of them, one of which is really far away in Wawona.
Right.
The closest one is El Portal. So El Portal is getting hammered.
Yeah.
By climbers.
Right.
The other option is to sleep in the boulders. And for climbers like Brad Gobright, who lived in a, Honda Civic or something, like, he can't sleep in his car anyway, so setting up camp in the boulders makes sense. But now there's so many climbers with vans, and you're like, why the fuck would I sleep outside on a rock when I can sleep in my nice van? I just need to find a place to park it.
Right.
So, yeah, you can try and get away with it and park illegally, but unless you have a pretty discreet rig, it's really obvious for the rangers to tell.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah,
they're not
so like
idiots,
you're
because even back in the day, that was an issue, right?
Yeah, you're
bang
likely
on the
to get
cap
busted.
Of your truck, and you'd have to like pretend to be asleep or like not be in there, and they'd be like, "We know you're in there."
When I had my minivan, I could consistently.
Minivan, yeah.
I slept in the park illegally for months,
right,
and never got caught, and I was really proud of that.
Yeah,
because my minivan could blend in.
Yeah, totally.
There was one night that they were going around and busting people, and I woke up and heard them, and I like snuck out of my door and like walked around like I was on a phone call or something until they left. But okay, so that's another option, is to try and sleep in the boulders, and people still do that.
Yeah, but aren't they like? I mean, you're like, okay, I'm going to go up in the boulders, and you're like, oh, somebody's home, up, somebody's home, up, somebody's home.
I don't think it's that
really
popular. No.
All right.
And of course, there's a lot of boulders in Yosemite,
right.
and
but there's the good ones.
Yeah, the main one is above Camp 4, but in my opinion, that's like also the most obvious.
Right.
So if you're smart, dirtbags might look elsewhere.
Okay.
Because there's plenty of other places to do that in the valley. So that's an option. Park illegally, drive outside. What I've resorted to, and this is, I'm pretty like fortunate to have this, is friends in the park.
Sure.
But my friends that live in the park live in Yosemite West, which is the same distance and the same amount of driving, the same wear and tear in your car as it is driving to El Portal. So it's really not that much difference. It's just a little bit more private.
Right.
But yeah, dude, it sucks. I mean, there's no way around it. The real thing is you could be an employee and get worked to death and then lose all your desire to climb and then spend your time like partying with all the other haggard employees and drink and hate your life, because that's the effect they seem to have on a lot of people.
That's not changed at all either.
So I kind of identified that early on, and I was like, I'm not going to work in Yosemite. I want to like this place, and I already kind of hate it with the popularity, right?
Right.
And so I know that it would kill it for me if I had to work there.
Well, it's funny because all those things are exactly the same.
Yeah. So
just more or less so, but
it's really just a little stricter
yeah.
and maybe a little bit more crowded.
Yeah.
That's really it. Not much has changed.
The van thing has changed.
The van thing has totally changed.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to El Cap Meadow now, and dude, Sprinters,
right,
ProMasters,
as far as the eye could see.
Dodge, just down the line.
Right. Yeah, that's a little bit different. But
that's just the climbing world in general.
Yeah, just the climbing world in general. But I just kind of like, I imagine like it's like the opposite of cockroaches. When you shine the light on cockroaches, everybody scurries.
Yeah.
And in Yosemite, when it gets dark, everybody scurries. Like the vans all scurry into all these little nooks and crannies.
And the best case scenario is to have friends with an employee or a resident, and you get to park at their house.
Right.
But that's hard. And I mean,
and plus
some people might be surprised, but like the most famous Yosemite climbers right now are Alex and Tommy, and they don't get special treatment. You know, they have to play by the same rules. And in a lot of ways, I like that about climbing, that it doesn't really matter. It's a pretty level playing field. But at the same time, with the increasing popularity of climbing and climbing in Yosemite, like if I worked for the park, I would see, what Tommy and Alex have done and, their films. They're basically advertising for Yosemite.
Mm-hmm.
And if I worked for the park, I'd be like, hey, like let's work together. Let's make a deal. So that's the kind of initiative I want to see with the National Park Service moving forward, is kind of working a little bit more closely with the climbers, especially the I'm biased here, but the pro climbers who are advocating for their parks,
Right.
making it a little easier for them to live and to, it can be a mutually beneficial relationship. And
Yeah, but do they need more business?
I don't know if they do.
I don't think
not.
they do.
And I mean, realistically, they don't want.
All we needed was
the
all
tourists
we needed was a deadly pandemic to
Yeah.
like boost their numbers through the freaking roof.
they probably don't see the value of climbers coming to the park. They just want the tourists being pumped through there.
Yeah, I mean that's always been the issue, right? What was the old line? They stay the longest, spend the least.
But let's talk about Yosemite climbing.
Okay, all right.
Enough about the shit. Like I said, Yosemite sucks unless you're climbing. So let's talk about the awesome parts.
Okay, cool. I just wanted the logistics. I just was
that's
how
the
does
logistics.
it work now? How do all these people get absorbed?
I get asked that a lot.
Because it felt the same back then, like there was too many of us for all the spots.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, I have this pull-out thing, and you'd pull in, and you'd be like, fuck, somebody's here.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And anyway, so
it's like that.
I mean,
now,
that's the same
more.
everywhere, really,
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. But anyway, that's why I brought it up. I know I don't want to harp on it
part
too
of
much.
that's part of the Yosemite crux nowadays is being able to figure those things out on your own, because it's not necessarily the kind of beta that everybody wants to share.
Right.
And that's not the beta I'm just spraying all over the internet.
Right.
And people ask me a lot, and I figured it out on my own. So I'm generally like, you can figure it out on your own too.
Yeah, we just ran scared.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we just like, Jesus Christ, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Like we have no options. We were like the carpetbaggers that had no beta because we don't hang out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got a place
right, because you would come in and just smash and grab.
Well, the other thing is I knowing all this, I was like, I got a place in El Portel, which was extremely expensive.
Totally.
But it was like, fuck it, I only got 2 weeks, so let's spend the 2 or 3 nights beforehand there, and we don't have to fuck around, and then we get up on the wall.
Yeah, you're on the wall and you're done.
And it was definitely worth it.
That's what a lot of the older climbers, like Mark, he doesn't spend seasons there like I do. He comes in, he does his route, and he leaves.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, well, let's talk about the climbing in Yosemite. Let's talk about Golden Gate.
Dude, totally.
You're
I'd love to talk about Golden Gate, because that's it's a pretty big story. There's a lot. I just mean that there's a lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, didn't I talk about it on the show last time? I had, started an attempt on Golden Gate when Tim and Jason died, right? And we talked about that.
Yeah, we did talk about that.
Yeah, I guess I could just pick up there.
Yeah.
Was
that in your first show?
Yeah, it wasn't my first show. That had just happened.
Oh, that had just happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Or were you climbing on that was off? Oh yeah, that was on the Golden Gate.
Yeah.
That's right.
My friend Jeremy and I were on, day one of what would have been a 6-day push, and on the free blast when that accident happened.
The accident where,
dude, that rattled my world, which we talked about.
Right. God, it had just happened.
Yeah, it had just happened.
That's right.
I think that's also why you wanted to talk to me.
No, because
or part of it.
I want to say that we had already been talking about doing one, because it was super fresh. Because I sent you a message about it.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have sent you a message about it cold if we hadn't already been chatting.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't have just been like, oh, this Jordan Cannon guy needs to hear from me right at this very cruxy moment. And I know I sent you a message about it, about dealing with it. So we had to have been like kind of chatting before that. It wasn't like, oh, cool, I'll talk to this guy because he saw this thing.
Right. No, I know.
Right. I'm not that kind of like podcast guy. Like, I'm like TMZ. Like, let's get him when he's in his worst possible moment and see what happens.
I could be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that was around the same time.
Yeah.
I
for sure.
I remember talking about that on the show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Golden Gate was my goal for the year that I put a lot of effort into preparing for and training for and everything. And when that accident happened, it really shifted my direction in climbing at the time. Especially in Yosemite, because my partner, Jeremy, who's still a really good friend of mine, an accident like that is going to have different effects on people. And it hit him in a way different than it hit me, and it really split our partnership up. And he was like my big wall partner. He was my guy that I was free climbing stuff with, and so after that, he didn't really want to be in the valley, and I kind of did. I wanted to climb there and to still pursue my goals, as using climbing as a way of like healing from that accident. But I really wasn't able to get back to that route until the following season. My friend Callan, who he's been mentioned on the show many times, he's supported me up many El Cap routes, and he was there the day of the accident. He was jugging up the heart lines, parallel to the accident, to bring us some like food and water to support our push. And yeah, when he learned that Jeremy wasn't psyched to go back and try, but I was, he was like, "Oh dude, I'll support you in the fall, like the following season," And so, yeah, I planned for that. We gave an attempt in the fall. And this is after I had met Mark in the summer and, got to climb with him and to really regain my bearings, because I was very scared climbing after that accident, and, being worried about my rope cutting or gear pulling or, partners taking epic falls. And yeah, so I really had to rebuild. And so when I met Mark, we were able to really work well together for that reason, because I wasn't really looking to like be very extreme in my climbing or too difficult in my climbing at the time. But yeah, so I went back with my friend Callan on the to do, I think we did a 6-day push up Golden Gate in the fall, and I was definitely more prepared mentally to do it. We did the route, but it was a battle for sure, and I was definitely still like struggling up there. And Callan, I don't think he had put that much thought into his own mental state, and I think he realized up there that he had a lot of things that he needed to work on with in regards to like his PTSD after something like that. And so that was a tough ascent. And I came within a free climbing one pitch of doing the whole route. I just failed on the A5 traverse. And then we had an epic ascent to the top, I was bummed, of course. I had like given everything I had, and it was day 6, and we had to top out, and I gave one more attempt on the A5 traverse, and I didn't send. And I was like, well, there's 5 glorious pitches of 511 to the top. Like, let's at least have fun and enjoy the rest of the day. And then the first pitch of the razor blades, I'm run out off the anchor trying to get to like the first bolt, and I'm like about to clip the first bolt, really run out, and I have like one piece above the anchor, and I break a part of the flake, and I take this big whipper and like swing into the belay underneath and hit my face on the haul bag, and my glasses broke, and I was like bleeding, and I had this huge cut.
That's when you cut your hand.
Yeah, I had this huge cut on my right hand, and I just looked up at the fear in Callan's eyes, and knowing that I was the only person who was going to get us to the top, and I just like wept. I was like, why? Like, why does this route have to be so epic? Yeah, so I basically, by any means necessary, scrapped my way to the top, but one pitch away from the top, that last 511 pitch.
I fucking
with the
know that last 511
which you can't
pitch.
aid.
You cannot aid.
You cannot aid.
No,
I did not know this.
Well, I tried that fucking ate the hell out of that, and
dude,
finally
me too.
You couldn't do it. You can't do it.
my friend Tom Chapin was watching from the meadow down below, and he was cheering me on. He's like, "You're almost there, dude!" And I hear like cheering me on in a text. Like I'm hanging on this pin, being like, "How the fuck do I get to the top of this thing?" Because I was in so much pain, and I was scared that I didn't want to free climb more than I had to. So I'm hanging there, just like contemplating life and being really upset.
And your phone's
my phone buzzes, and I like pull it out, and Tom's like, "You're almost there, dude. You got it." And I like impulsively called him. I was like, "Tom, I'm fucking epicing right now." I was like, I don't know how to get to the top of this damn route. Anyways, I basically just had to muster up some courage and grit my teeth and like free climb that bit and get to the top.
Yeah.
And we got to the top, and the sun is going down, and I'm trying to haul the last pitch, and there's all those roofs, and so I was expecting the bag to get stuck, and so I kept hearing Callan yell, "Stop!" Whenever I would haul, assuming that the bag was getting stuck, and he, had to wait for him to free it. But then I later learned when he got to the top, I was like, "Dude, what was up with the haul bag?" And he's like, "I'm sorry, man. I was really scared, and I kept tying in short to the haul bag, so it wasn't actually getting stuck. You were just pulling on me." And And then he also was very scared jugging the lead line because he tied like 50 backup knots in the lead line. And then I couldn't pull the lead line up. It was stuck. And so I was like, fuck it. We're bailing. Like, I just want to get off this damn mountain. And so we basically just shit showed all of our stuff up there, and we left our rope just fixed to the tree, just like dangling in the wind with all these knots in it. And we just ran down the east ledges to try and make it back in time for dinner. And the next day, or like, I think Brad Gobert had gone up there in one of his in-a-day attempts, whatever, and he's like, dude, what was up with that rope? I was like, I don't even want to talk about it. So yeah, I came back for the Golden Gate with Callan, very thankful for his support, but had an epic ascent and was like, dude, why does this route have to be so epic, you know? I wish, and these two guys die at the start of this route, and now I'm trying to come back and like piece myself together, and it just wasn't happening. And so yeah, it became a big climb in my life.
You know, in the meantime, and you know, it's been a running joke with Andrew and I that, like, you know, Emily Harrington like came in and you know, did it just a little bit before you did, and you've joked about it with us on the run out about how it was like she did it and no one cared that you did it,
right? I forgot to mention that's my main reason for coming on the show was to accept my award officially,
the Jorg Verhoeven Award. I forgot your plaque. I'll have to come by and get it.
Well, at least it's on the record now that I've accepted my award. Thank you very much for your consideration.
All right, well, this is a different show, so we have to explain what the Jorg Verhoeven Award is. Right. Is that I think I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right, and I would love to have him on the show.
Jorg Verhoeven.
Yeah, Jorg Verhoeven
come on the show.
Did I think what it was, the fourth ascent of the nose, ascent of the nose,
and then the dihedral wall,
and he also freed the dihedral wall, which is, as I've mentioned on the Tommy Caldwell episode, is something that even when Tommy did it was sort of lost to history as how badass that is.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And then no one cared because the Dawn Wall blew up like just a few days later, a few weeks later after his season, and so it was like nobody cared. So the Jorg Verhoeven Award is when you do something that is totally rad and should receive all the media attention, but something else happens to sort of like steal your thunder.
Yeah.
But when did Emily get involved and like you guys start to know about each other's worlds on the Golden Gate?
We actually met, I think, before my very first attempt on Golden Gate with Jeremy.
Right.
And yeah, I met her and Nellie, Cedar's wife.
Mm-hmm.
I met them in the cafeteria, and I just approached them and told them about my goal and shared a nice conversation as climbers and got some beta and encouragement from her, because that was a big reason why I wanted to try Golden Gate, honestly. Was not because it was the next easiest route after the Freerider, which that's a big reason, but because there was this awesome video that John Glassberg made that I saw on YouTube, when I was in college, and it was like, that looks amazing. And Emily's like grit and determination and perseverance and seeing that through to the end and sending was like so inspiring to me. And so Emily's been a hero of mine since then. So yeah, so I met her before my first attempt.
Right.
So after my attempt with Callan, I was like, all right, when am I going back? And this was right when I had met Mark. He was on another El Cap route while I was epicking on Golden Gate. But that was in the fall, and this was before our big free rider season, which we've talked about on previous episodes and run out episodes. And so he was just about to go to Mexico for the winter, and we were planning to pick up in the spring. And so the goal was for Mark to do the Freerider and for me to do Golden Gate. And that spring I was able to do Golden Gate, and Mark supported me over 4 days, and I had like an awesome ascent. It was really great. And not to put anything on Callan, but like I said, he was kind of blindsided by his mental trauma from witnessing the accident while he supported me my first time topping out the route. I was able to see the difference climbing with somebody like Mark, who was able to relieve a lot of that like mental stress on me, because he was just there to support me, and he was fully game for everything.
Yeah, and he's also an incredibly dialed wall climber.
Totally. And so that was huge. That was really what I needed to have the experience that I wanted. And I got to see my goal through to the end, and kind of reflect on my first attempt and this accident and going back with Callan, and then meeting Mark and developing this great partnership and him supporting me up it, and that was really great. But then Mark wasn't able to give an attempt on the freerider that year for various reasons, and so our plans for that got pushed to the fall. And I was like, well, since I'm done with Golden Gate, and I'm spending this time with Mark on the freerider still, I might as well try and do it in a day, because that was always a goal at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, Emily was trying to do Golden Gate in a day. And yeah, and I was just watching her progress and watching her attempts. And, we even camped on the summit one night with her partner, Anna, and Mark and I. And yeah, so we were both kind of pursuing, free climbing El Cap in a day at the same time, just via different routes. And I did the free rider in a day that season, and Emily got really close on Golden Gate, and she was like, "Oh, you should try Golden Gate next year." And I was like, "Yeah, that would actually be really rad." And so that's kind of how we started coordinating and working towards this goal. I mean, I don't want to say together, but right. At the same time.
Yeah, but it feels like that, I think, sometimes when you're.
Yeah, well, It did become that, because Emily became a friend of mine last summer. Basically, I ended up in tent sleep with Emily and a bunch of her friends,
mm-hmm.
On my first, U.S. sport climbing road trip. And yeah, it was very clear, she was training for Golden Gate in the day in the fall, and I was doing the same. And then once we were both in Yosemite, we got to team up together for a few prep missions. She had been there before me and was getting a little more dialed, and so she was ahead of the game in terms of her preparation. And I was happy to play be the last piece of the puzzle before she was ready to send.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool working with, because John is making a film about Emily and this ascent, and it was really cool to see the whole story come full circle from like I said, I was inspired by Emily and the video that John made when I was in college. And then I went and climbed that route, and here I am climbing on the route with Emily and John filming, where we're both trying to do it in a day now. And that was amazing to see how climbing you can evolve or develop those kind of partnerships and friendships from people you once looked up to.
Well, with Emily's ascent too, she kind of epicked at the end and then pulled it off.
Dude, yeah. Wait till you see the footage. It's outrageous.
Yeah,
it's gonna be so
looking
rad.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, and I mean, your ascent though, it sounds like was more just by the book.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, you went up and sent it. You didn't have any sort of full on face smashing whippers. Or
No, my ascent was definitely less epic.
How did it feel?
But I tried it on Halloween a few days before Emily sent.
Right.
And then I went back
what
a week
happened on that
later.
One?
Basically, poor tactics and dealing with the heat. One big thing about you have to have really good tactics to be able to pull off a free ascent of El Cap in a day, especially a route as hard as Golden Gate. And everything went so well. And well, there's one thing I'd like to say before this. I had a moment. One thing I really appreciate in climbing now is the opportunity to try. When all the stars align that give you the best opportunity to really try your best, those moments are few and far between, I think. Because sometimes you don't get the best conditions, or you don't have the right partner, or whatever. And as things came together for my ascent, I didn't have a partner, and Mark was on an El Cap route with his friend Scott doing an aid wall. And I was like, Mark, I'm really ready. I want to try Golden Gate. Will you support me? And he was supposed to drive to Mexico the next day, but he stuck around one day to support me, which meant a lot. And so I had a partner. The weather was perfect. It was going to be Halloween. My friend Max was going to wrap in to take some photos. There was going to be a party with some of my friends afterwards. I was like, man, this is the epic day. And it felt like it was all coming together. And I was just driving into the valley that day, in preparation for my attempt starting that night. And I looked at El Cap, and I was just teared up a little bit. I was like, dude, this is the best. Having the opportunity where everything comes together to just try your best, send or no send.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the greatest thing. So anyways, my first attempt was on Halloween, and I sent everything up to the A5, and then I failed on the A5. But the first epic thing that happened was the heat. In all of our prep missions, wrapping in or climbing from the ground, it was always cold up there in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But then coming from the ground in a day attempt, we get to Tower of the People, the last ledge, I don't know, not a few hundred feet from the top, where the Golden Desert and then the A5 Traverse pitch, the last two crux pitches of the route are. And it was absurdly hot. And I was in this point where I was like, boy, it's really too hot to send, but at the same time, what else are we going to do? Are we going to wait here till the sun goes down and it gets dark again and the temps go down? And I hadn't really considered that as an option because I hadn't even considered the fact that it might be too hot to free climb in the sun. And when you're up there, a day like that it's like all about you, which is a little weird. It puts a lot of pressure on you and you feel a sense of responsibility with the people playing into your big day. Like Mark was there supporting me, and I felt like a responsibility to not make his day that epic. And my friend Max wrapped in to take photos, and you feel a responsibility to like make it worth his time. And so you can put a lot of pressure on yourself that makes pulling off what you're trying to do even harder. And so basically I threw myself at the A5 or the Golden Desert like 5 times in a row. And was just melting off, and I like couldn't climb it at all. It was insane. It was so hot. And yeah, I lower back down to the ledge where Mark was hanging and Max comes down, and I'm like, I think I have to wait until the sun goes down, which was like 6 hours later. And I was like, are you guys down for that? And I was afraid to ask because that seemed absurd to ask for more of their time. And they were both psyched. They were both willing to be there and support. And so that's what we did. We hung out on the ledge and we like napped and baked in the sun for a few more hours until the sun went down. And as soon as that pitch was in the shade and I tried it again, I did it first try. It was no problem. And the whole time I was like, man, I really should have just like had the foresight to just call it
right
as soon as I knew it was too hot. And then, of course, I was too smoked. I gave the A5 Traverse in the dark one try and was just like, this isn't happening. Yeah, and so I gave it one more try because I had a bunch of friends, like Emily and Alex and all my friends down in the valley and in the meadow. I could even hear some of them hollering and getting texts. Some people are like James Lucas. He's like, dude, go to the death. And we're like, dig, there's all that cliche stuff like, oh, dig deep, find something inside of you and like pull off some heroic feat. And I was already like, dude, I already dug out what was ever there. Like there's nothing
the
left.
well's empty, baby.
There's nothing left. And yeah, we dug out, since we had, Max had fixed some lines to wrap down and take some photos. And yeah, we hiked down and it was the most worked I've ever been. That was a really, really long day. It ended up being like, I don't know, 27-hour day or something overall. Yeah, Mark left the next day and I was like, that's it. That's my try. And then, I know Emily's planning to try in a few days. And of course I want her to send because she already has had the same exact day I just had where she came within one pitch of sending. And I know she had put a lot more effort into it. But then I'm in the valley floor the day she's up there and I'm like watching through binoculars and I'm getting updates and I'm just like, the same exact thing happened to her. She gets to the Golden Desert. It's too hot and she's like struggling on this pitch that's normally not that hard for her. And I'm like, oh God, the same exact thing's happening to Emily. And I was really afraid that she wasn't going to pull it off. And then especially with her fall, she hit her head but dude, that just speaks to Emily and her preparation and her team that she had supporting her that day. She was much more prepared and she was ready because same thing. She had to wait for the Golden Desert to go into the shade and she sent first try. And then, at the end of that pitch before you start the A5, it's just a hanging belay. It's really hard to recover there. And she had the tactic of bringing an inflatable portaledge and like hanging out for an hour. And then she brought knee pads so she could knee bar through the first bit of the crux and like save that little bit of energy. And then she fucking pulled it off. And I was like, damn, that just shows she was more prepared than I was. And that really inspired me afterwards. And of course I was like a little bummed for myself. I was like, man, I really wish I would have like been able to make it happen when I had my chance. But of course was like psyched for Emily. Yeah, she had put more effort in and was more prepared, and she had already failed in the same way that I had. So, and I did, of course, it would have been kind of lame had I done it before, because then she wouldn't have gotten the recognition and the attention and the everything that she deserved, right?
Yeah, she would have.
You think?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure.
No,
I didn't want to
totally.
I didn't want to steal her thunder.
Well, maybe a little bit, but no, they're sorry, but
okay, good.
People would have for sure. I mean, you know.
Well, of course.
She already had
she's
kind
the
of this
first woman
international following. And
totally.
Yeah.
And she's the first woman to free
the groundwork was already laid.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like those people on, you know, the mainstream media just happened to notice her doing it. There was, you know, there was groundwork laid for them to notice.
Sure.
We can just say that.
Okay. I always thought that it was like a perfect storm kind of thing. But anyways,
you know, it's just part of being a professional, dude.
Yeah,
you
totally.
Get with it.
Totally. So I'm happy with how it played out because I got to, you know, I stayed up late.
So then who was your partner for when you did it?
So this is the thing. This was like the biggest crux of the whole thing. Like I felt like I had my chance.
Right.
I had my partner.
It's
I had
like
my
time
perfect
to wrap
day.
it up.
Yeah, it was time to wrap it up because the weather went to shit after that. It snowed in the valley. It got really cold. It was raining. Mark, my partner, had left.
You're just walking around kicking slush.
Emily had already sent, and yeah, so I was in, and I was wrecked, dude, because I didn't plan for more than one attempt, and neither did Emily. Emily was like, I have my one attempt. If it doesn't happen, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And I kind of felt the same way. And so, and if you have more foresight going in, like if I would have pulled the plug earlier, knowing like it's not going to happen, I'm going to save energy and for another day. But I went to the death. And when you go to the death, it's like much harder to recover afterwards. But I took some notes out of Emily's book and she gave me some beta and tactics. And she even went back up there with me one day. Well, we went back up there together. She posed down for some photos with John, but then I got a few extra belays on the cruxes. But anyways, yeah, that was the biggest crux for me was piecing together another attempt and staying psyched to try it again and not feeling like I had to wait, you know, another year until the next season. Yeah, I was hanging out in the parking lot one day thinking about who I could get a partner, and my friend Josh McClure rides up, and I was kind of just randomly threw it out there. I was like, hey, man, would you climb Golden Gate with me? And he was like, yeah, sure. I was like, really? I was like, it's a big day. It's going to be a lot of work. And he was like, yeah, no, that's cool. He's like, I've been wanting to like check that route out. It'd be fun. And he was great. And we did one big rap mission together to rehearse the cruxes one more time, and then yeah, he supported me and had like the perfect day.
Did you pull out the portaledge and the knee pads?
We did. Emily let me borrow her portaledge.
Right.
She told me to bring knee pads. She left me some like gold duct tape up there, and this time I had the tactics.
Right.
You know, that's what I'm really grateful for the lessons I learned on that first failed attempt because they're game changer. And definitely things I'll like take into other ascents down the road. But yeah, so I got to the Golden Desert, same thing. It was hot, and I was like, dude, this sucks. And I was like, well, I'm gonna give it an attempt, and if I don't pull it off, I'll just rest and wait till the sun goes down. Partially because of my preparation, I had that pitch way more dialed. I did it first try in the heat, and it was fine. I was like, sick. It's too hot to try the A5. I'm gonna come down. We set up the ledge. We like hung our clothes off of it to create a little like sunshade. We like drank a bunch of water and food. I had my iPhone out. We were watching The Office on Netflix. Like we were chilling. We were chilling and recovering, you know. And then we went back up there as soon as the sun went down to try and fire off the last pitch. And I did it first try. And like, yeah, just totally broke down at the anchor. Even more so than when I sent Golden Gate over 4 days with Mark the first time, you know, because I really saw the whole thing come full circle for myself, and so yeah, that meant a lot to me in that moment, and you know, I text Mark and he called me and was really psyched, and then yeah, we just got to have a great experience to the top.
Do you think you're getting a reputation as a crier?
Maybe. Have I really cried that much? Dude, Emily's known. John asked me that in an interview for Emily's movie. If like, yeah, because Emily's known for crying up there, and she's just not afraid to let people see it, and not afraid to give it her all. And I admire that because, dude, it's fucking hard up there. A lot of tears have been shed on that pitch from failure and success.
Yeah, from
the greats like Brad Gobright, and I'm not saying that they cried, but like, you know, he failed there before. Ethan Pringle and Tommy and Alex have even fallen on that pitch before. So like, yeah, a lot of broken dreams have been realized on that pitch.
It's I mean, you know, It's kind of like we were talking about with Tommy and Alex of like, oh yeah, they did this rad thing. Like, okay, cool. But like these big wall free climbs too, you're saying, oh, everybody's been doing the free rider. And it's true. But the leap from the wall version to the in a day version.
You're right. That is
it's humongous. And, we've mentioned this before because we've talked about the Golden Gate with my ascent and stuff too.
Yeah.
Which was nothing like your ascent. We did climb it. That's all I can say. But the Golden Gate thing is so rad because we're talking about failing, like because you fail to get across this thing that's called the A5 Traverse. It's ironic. There's nothing A5 about it.
No.
There's
it would be like
A3
if it was, if you were to actually aid it.
Yeah, if you actually had to put the pins in that are already there. But
yeah, it's all fixed.
It's totally like fixed, and it's no stretch of the imagination to run out. The earlier pitches, but nevertheless, point being is you've climbed 30 pitches or something when you get there.
Yeah, you're like 2,200 feet off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's like, oh, I failed, because I fell off of this thing that you're supposed to go from this kind of bullshit hanging belay to a ledge. I mean, where you get to is definitely like a proper belay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a failure. But the fact is you've climbed this massive thing. You've already climbed 513 by the time you got there, 2 pitches of it.
Yeah.
A shitload of 512, a shitload of like techie, scary, sometimes other free climbing.
Yeah.
But you failed because this rule that says you.
I know.
It's
right.
like it's totally this
you
mind-boggling
didn't free the
thing.
whole thing, but we climbed the whole route.
Right.
In a day.
But in terms of like athletic feat.
Yeah.
And again, even comparing it to other athletics, what you've done is astounding.
Even in failure.
Even in failure.
Sure.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just
no,
this, like,
I know what
game
you mean.
We play and like,
and I
you
say
spent years like trying to clean up this thing. It's so weird and intense when we talk about it in climbing.
Totally.
And it's like it didn't garner you fame. I don't think it probably like added anything to your value as a sponsored athlete or anything like that.
No, but it made
completely
me feel
personal.
It made me feel fulfilled.
Right.
And of course, I don't really like the word failure because I didn't complete my goal. I guess you could call that a failure,
right.
But I learned so much and I had so much fun. Like that was even the day I didn't send. Like Mark and I brought costumes because it was Halloween. We like wore them on the Tower to the People. And, and like had a little party up there. Like it was so fun. So even though I didn't like complete my goal, it's hard to call it a failure.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's the whole point of it. But in the fact that it was entirely, like I said, it was entirely personal because, again, like people have this idea that, quote unquote professional climbers need to be one-upping themselves all the time or their sponsors can be like, all right, what have you done lately?
Yeah.
And on a large sense, like if you drop out, if your presence sort of in the public eye drops, there's definitely a place where a sponsor will be like, well, what are we getting out of this?
Yeah.
But it's definitely not like, where's your latest send and tell me how rad it was and was it radder than your last one?
Right.
So it's just interesting because it was a completely personal pursuit that like brought you to the edge of your mental capabilities, your physical capabilities, all for just the hell of it, really.
Yeah. It's an absurd game we play.
It's so absurd. When we get into that level of it too.
Yeah, totally. Because there's a lot of nuance in the like big wall free climbing in general, but then the whole in a day free ascents. That's just
well, and it's and the fact that when we talk about we went Emily and I went up there and we did she gave me some belays on these pitches and stuff like that, and you're just like what you did in that like casual sort of recon mission is a life-changing ascent for 99% of climbers.
Yeah, what that means is we hiked, we jugged to the top of El Cap, we wrapped in like 1,000 feet, we climbed and belayed. Yeah, it's like a full day. There's a lot of work that goes into that kind of stuff.
So it's just kind of, it's like this is like a cool detailed story to go into like the very nitty gritty of what it takes to do something like that.
And I'm glad I'm getting to tell this, so thanks, because this is an important story to me that I don't think a lot of people are necessarily aware of when they see something like, oh, Jordan free climb Golden Gate in a day. Like there was a lot, that was a big thing for me, just coming back to my first attempt and, witnessing that accident and how that affected my climbing.
Well, we get this feeling that it's sort of casual when we see, like I said, when we see Tommy, we see Alex, and actually, another person, and we should probably talk about him as well. Go Bright.
Yeah, totally.
Too, like he sort of epitomized like the casual style and attempt at stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I should you jokingly asked me if I'm gonna get a reputation as being a crier, but that was a big part of my emotion in trying this route. Is that before I even climbed with Brad for the first time and before we became friends, I had a photo that Dan Kraus took of him failing on the A5 Traverse when he tried to climb it in a day. And I just loved that photo, not only for the position and the lighting and the composition and everything, but you can just see how hard Brad is trying. And that's what I loved about Brad, is he just always seemed to be able to give it his all and really, really push himself. And so, which is what you're saying with me in this ascent. Like, that's what I'm really grateful for Yosemite and El Cap for, because that is the climbing where I feel most inspired and I feel most motivated, and that's where I'm able to really like push my limits on this epic scale in so many different ways. But yeah, dude, Brad was the OG. So that photo is actually at Alex's cabin in Tahoe. I actually kind of want to bring it back now that I have a van. But he's right there on the South in my van. He was kind of the king of the casual ascent, like you're saying. He had so many in a day free ascents of El Cap that he just seemed to like one year he did 3 in a day free ascents.
Right.
Like 3 separate routes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Not in the same day. It's hard to say that.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean.
We get what you. I mean, and again, like,
that's epic, dude.
It's so epic.
It's so epic. Like, he's,
and again, like,
forever hero.
He just sat in this position where he certainly was famous. He certainly got a lot of accolades, and he wasn't very good at the hustle.
Yeah.
That wasn't in his wheelhouse. It started to be, but at the first, it definitely was not in his wheelhouse. But when he passed away, at some point, I posted something about that, of just like, everybody's saying what kind of great climber he was, but we're not actually giving him his due. Even you can't hardly get there because he was so good. But it just kind of went under the radar a little bit.
And he wasn't doing it for the recognition or necessarily his career. It was the same kind of thing. He was doing it because that's what he liked to do. Brad was just out there doing his thing.
Yeah.
And regardless of sponsorship, he would have been doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. No. I mean, he was like barely sponsored.
Yeah. Right. Right. He definitely wasn't the best pro. I didn't take many notes out of his book in that regard.
Although I met him at OR. I mean, not met him, but we sat down at OR.
Yeah.
I met him years before that, but yeah, we sat down at OR. But yeah, he was a fish out of water at those things, 100%.
Totally.
Which is like why he was, I mean, I think he was such an icon in his own way. Because he was he was like the last breed of this, like,
yeah, we like those kinds of characters.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the kind of climber I want to emulate is, somebody who climbs for themselves, but is also knows how to be a good pro.
Yeah. I mean, it's two different paths. Like, I mean, it was for better or worse, obviously. But so Brad's death happened in the last few years also as sort of your ascendancy in the Yosemite scene.
Totally.
So
he was he was a big mentor of mine in a way. And I feel like he really helped me realize my potential in a way. Like, you know how you can sometimes have those partners who are better than you and more experienced than you and sometimes older than you, but you team up with them every now and then for this big thing that seems out of your wheelhouse, but then, following their leads and their encouragement, you realize, like, oh shit, like, I can actually hang better than I thought. Brad was that partner for me,
Right.
I would team up largely most of the time to support him on goals that he had, but occasionally we would, team up to climb routes that neither of us had done. And I would always surprise myself, and, he would always be like, dude, you could come back and do this route next season. I'd be like, yeah, you're right, I could. And so I really felt like he was always just a few steps ahead of me, paving the way, and I was kind of just like following his footsteps, And when I climbed the Freerider in a day the first time, like, he was one of the first people I saw back down on the valley floor, and he was all psyched. And then and he was a big inspiration in addition to Emily, to go back and want to do Golden Gate in a day. And so not to be forgotten there.
So you have some other plans now for in terms of following in his footsteps, for example, of in a day ascents or repeating free climbs on El Cap? What?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so much emphasis on El Cap climbing, which I get kind of tired of after a while because, like El Cap is the crown jewel of Yosemite, but there's so much good climbing in Yosemite, and so I don't ever want to just allude to think that that's like the main thing. There's so many other things I want to climb there also, but yeah, I've definitely, like, this past season in the Valley, essentially I got there late. I never have shown up earlier than May 1st. But this year, I showed up in May, and it was like people had been there ascending for like the past 2 months, and I was like, dude, what? I was like, it's hot already. Like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to free climb any of the things I want. Yeah, so I was definitely a little envious this season. There were so many really rad climbers out there getting after it and sending big routes and doing cool things, and particularly on El Cap. And I felt like a little left out, and I was kind of reflecting on my own climbing and thinking, yeah, I've only done 2 El Cap routes free. I've gone back to do them in a day, which is a different thing. But yeah, I'm really eager to climb different parts of the wall and climb different routes. And yeah, the whole in a day thing is really the most fun game I can think of. The best way I've found to like really push myself. So,
motivate yourself.
Yeah. So I'm definitely interested in doing more of that.
I was thinking about, as you were talking, but also before this, like, there was all these pieces and parts to this Golden Gate thing.
Yeah.
And again, starting very tragically with the accident. And I think, I think I've expressed this before, but how, I don't know, there's a point in a climbing career, at least I think, where you have to be careful that you are, or maybe not, but it happens, whether it's you accept it or not, I guess, or try to avoid it. But you're sort of trying to recreate an experience that you'd had previously. It's been a little while since I've done an international trip, but that feeling of like, I'm going to this place I've never been, and there's this like new language, and it's just going to be one sort of crazy, uncomfortable adventure after another. And then I get there and I'm like, yeah, this is uncomfortable, but I'm really not that into, it's like my whole view on it changed, but I want that same feeling. And,
right.
And in some ways, Golden Gate fits that for me. Like, I went there trying to have a certain type of experience, and I was handed a completely different one, and totally valuable experience. But like, I kind of was there to kind of like recapture some sort of glory.
Totally.
And I was just like, how can this, your breakdown on the end of that A5 Traverse, like, sort of ever be topped?
You're right. I'm not sure it ever could, but who knows?
Whatever, you can maybe.
Who knows what might happen in the future? There might be something
right.
even more epic.
Well, that's the thing, right?
You never know.
Adventure
because,
is part of it, right? Yeah. That's the nature of adventure. That's why you're looking for it.
That is a good thing to note, though. And the first time anybody told me anything like that was after I did the Freerider ground up. Tom Herbert told me that. He's like, this is like, he could see it was a big deal for me, and he wanted to make sure that I'm not chasing to top those experiences,
right?
And to value them for what they were at the time,
right?
And
right.
yeah, so I think doesn't mean that you're not going to have things bigger, but yeah, just you don't want to fool yourself into pursuing something that you're not going to get, and so it's kind of a roundabout way, right? Like, I did top my Freerider experience on Golden Gate. I wasn't trying to; it just played out that way. And
well, I mean, I would love to see you climbing something with Emily.
Yeah, totally.
That would be super sick.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun climbing up there together.
Right.
And so yeah, we've definitely talked. We've definitely talked about climbing something.
Well, because it's also the in a day thing, or even freeing El Cap routes, falls into this category a lot of times where you are supported.
Yeah.
And it's not just you and a buddy up there. I mean, it's hardly ever swinging leads in the very traditional sense, but, as a relatively equal team.
Yeah.
There's all these, like, asterisk to my free rider ascent in terms of it actually being a free ascent or whatever, because we were doing that. We were climbing as partners.
Right.
And so that changed how many pitches I led, which pitches I led, all that sort of thing. But it was this style that I actually really admire. And that's the kind of thing when I think about the In a Daze, and I'm sure you feel this way too, is, and you mentioned it earlier, like it becomes this like really one person focus. So it just feels to me as you as a climber who also, has this foot in this, tradition, it feels like that would be another place of like finding more fulfillment,
totally
to balance these days of where it's just about me.
And like I said, after the accident, I essentially lost Jeremy as my big wall partner.
Right.
I hope that gets rekindled at some point. We still sport climb and boulder together, which is great. But yeah, I mean, that loss of that partnership definitely changed my climbing and my goals. And that's why I was, really thankful when Mark came into my life and we were able to partner up together. But, now we're just at different points in our climbing lives. And yeah, that's something, like I was saying, I'm envious. I've never really had a like team ground up El Cap free ascent attempt before.
Right.
And like, that sounds really, all of my El Cap ascents have been like me taking point, never really sharing the free climbing experience anyways with another partner.
Well, it's
I want that. Yeah. That sounds
but it's
so
also,
fun.
we were talking about Amity Warm. I actually don't. Is that how you pronounce your last name? It's Warme.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think it is Warm.
I've talked to her, but just in texting, so you never hear.
Yeah, Amity,
Tyler,
Tyler Caro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
crushed
ground up ascent. I think it was they hadn't rehearsed or anything.
No,
right?
no.
Yeah.
Amity had climbed the free rider,
right,
and Tyler had like aided the Salafay. So they were familiar with the first half of the route, but the whole Golden Gate actual portion, neither of them had climbed.
Which is the business.
The biz.
So,
yeah.
But but the thing that was interesting about it, and it stuck out, is because it's actually really quite unusual.
It is, and let's use this opportunity to talk about like a little bit of the ethics, like. Yeah, ground up is the way. It's kind of like you only have one chance to try, right? Whether it's a sport route, and you're like, well, I might as well try an on-site. It's like that's the mentality with going ground up on a big free route like that. Also, is like, yeah, you can always come back and try. So you don't always have to put this rehearsal in. Like it's a really rad and respectable adventure to try and do these things ground up, whether you succeed or fail, because it just leaves so much more adventure on the table.
Well, and
I think is lost with a lot of the rehearsal.
I think
these days.
too the mental fortitude as well as just the fitness to be up there trying to red point those pitches after days of being up there and like just continuing to throw yourself at them, because that was the thing. I mean, and I talked about it on my show about the Golden Gate. It's just how fucking wrecked I was.
Yeah.
To be like, now I'm going to just put my climbing shoes on and like try to climb.
Totally.
Even 512.
You're
I was
like,
what the fuck is going on?
Like
and,
you wake up and you're like, time to climb 513 for breakfast.
Right.
Like, how does that happen? And
right.
How you have to self-regulate in those moments where you're like, okay, I know I have to try hard to send, but I still have 12 more pitches to go and I don't know what those entail. And so I have to like try and keep some in reserve, and you're constantly trying to play that game.
Yeah.
Of like,
well, and it's that ascent, and I've been in negotiations with at least Amity to come on the show. She's down. We just have to get it done. But it was just like, I was just like, what?
Yeah.
It was just rad. It was super rad.
Yeah.
Because even when we did our ascent, just the fact that even though it was like a completely flaccid attempt at it, the fact that we even just did that kind of flabbergasted some people in the valley. They were just like, you just like started at the bottom and went to the top and thought you would try to free climb it. So
yeah, totally.
And I was just like, well, we didn't have time to go. And besides, it's just, we just wanted to climb it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in my head of like, I'm showing everybody up by trying to ground up. It was just, that's how we had the logistics to try to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll always remember my ground up attempt on the free rider. And that was to this day, one of the raddest adventures, having never been up there and trying to free climb a lot of these pitches on site. Yeah, it's freaking fun doing that. And I'm thankful I didn't get to do that on Golden Gate because of this accident, and I didn't have a partner. I decided to wrap in, not only to rehearse some of the pitches, but to like fix up the route. The route was in bad condition.
Right. Yeah, no, I would.
So I sacrificed my ground up.
I remember part of our communication either before or after. I think it was before we did a show together. I think we were talking about the Golden Gate is how we ended up starting to talk.
That might have been it, yeah.
Yeah, because I knew you had been up there, and I was like, yeah, this thing's a fucking mess, dude.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like,
yeah. And I was
kind
really,
of embarrassing. I was like embarrassed for it.
You know, I was really inspired by the Dawn Wall at the time when that movie came out, and Tommy's talking about, you know, going through his divorce, and he's like, you know, basically what I did was just invest in this free climbing El Cap project,
right,
and just like getting back on the horse. And that was totally when I saw that in theaters, I was like, yep, that's what I'm going to do on Golden Gate. And so I kind of used my solo time up there as like a sense of a little bit of healing for me. It was also preparation, and I got to clean up the route for other people because it's getting climbed.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the main focus is on the free rider and on Golden Gate, and I assume as the popularity increases and people's climbing ability and levels increase, it's going to spread out on other routes because there's a lot of other rad routes there.
I'm
sorry, Golden Gate took up a lot of our time.
That was great. I mean, what else is there? What else you been climbing?
Nothing. I haven't been doing anything. I'm just kidding.
You get pretty proud of attempt on Ronnie's spew today,
dude. Yeah, thanks for the belay.
one hang.
Trying to get back into the rifle mode.
Yeah, actually, we didn't even bring that up that we're sitting in rifle.
Yeah, we're in rifle. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
I pestered you to come back on the show.
Yeah,
because I want to. One, I know you're a dad now and don't get out of Colorado that much. therefore it's hard to get new guests. But I told you I listened on my drive out here from Reno. I listened to like the run out and the Enormocast the whole time. I'm surprised I didn't get sick of listening to you guys.
I know. I'm surprised when people tell me that all the time.
But you
I
mentioned
like
that
40 episodes in a row. I'm like, ugh.
You're like,
really?
Why? But you said in a few episodes, like, you're like, well, you know, I try and interview whoever's most convenient. And I'm like, well, I'm coming through rifle.
Yeah, being convenient.
So
it's good.
And I knew, I've been on the show with Mark and on the run out and stuff, but thought it'd be fun to catch up since our first interview 5 years ago.
When we did that interview, not knowing you, I remember walking away from the interview, you had sort of talked about and also hinted about your upbringing.
Yep.
And sort of a conservative religious upbringing, and having kind of like stepped away from that. And, you know, you said you went to this Christian college where you'd done soccer and stuff like that. We didn't get into it too much, but I remember after I got to know you later and running into you at certain places, and I was kind of like, okay, he's sort of exhibiting that kind of, you know, I know some Jack Mormons, you know, some folks that grew up super fundamental Mormons and then they walked away from it. And it's still like this thing that's in their head that's like influencing them maybe in a negative way or a way they're trying to get into. But it's like, you know, it's sort of in your DNA if it's like put into you as a kid. And that was my opinion, is I was like, yeah, he's kind of just like a little bit messed up. I think his relationship with his parents is a little bit tough because of that. But then I get this text from you, me and Andrew get this text from you this spring about how you were going to come out as gay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this thing in my head where I was just like, oh, like that's literally like the angst. Like I could feel the angst.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, well, I called that wrong. Although I didn't, because in a way they're both combined. Just going back to this text that you got in touch with us, that you wanted to come out. You were going to post on Instagram, and you wanted to do a show with us. Now, first of all, and I expressed this on the show, I was quite, I don't know if honored's the right word, but I was very pleased that you trusted us to do this thing with you. And but like I said, it also like made a couple things click, because I also had this story that I think we talked about, but not on air, was that I was driving through Newcastle when you were here in Rifle, and I saw you on the street, and I was like, I just saw the look on your face. I was like, fuck, that he is not happy right now. I don't know what he's doing here in Newcastle, and I'm not going to like pull over and wave at him because he looks super bummed and super serious. And I think you were I think visiting with your parents after some long period of not having talked to them.
Yep, that's correct.
And then again, like in retrospect, I was like, okay, so these things are all sort of coming together. So anyway, you came out this spring.
Yeah.
And we've been wanting to talk about climbing on this show because one of the things you expressed when you did that was like, I don't want to be, the gay climber. But I do want to bring it up because one of the things that happened when you did come out, I said flat out that, oh yeah, don't look at the comments, like, because you were going to post something on Instagram. You have a pretty big following, and but it turns out I was super wrong about that.
You were entirely wrong. Actually.
I was entirely wrong about that. So just we can finish up here with that because I just wanted to put a marker on it because it was an important thing actually to me that you involved me and Andrew in that, and I felt really good about that. And we tried to do our best for you when we did that show.
Yeah, no, and you guys did, and yeah, you guys are my climbing guys. You guys are the crotchety old climbers that
you
identify
have a
with.
penchant for hanging out with guys like us.
Yeah, so no, it was a no-brainer for me, really. If I was going to try to put something out in the climbing world.
But the reaction, I haven't talked to you really since then. I mean, we texted a little bit or messaged a little bit.
Well,
but it seemed pretty friggin' positive.
Yeah, it has been. It's been great. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I just wanted to address what you're saying about something clicking, and whenever I did, tell you guys and share that I was going to come out, and then you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You hadn't maybe put your finger on it, but it made sense based on what you saw I was going through, or what I had revealed about my past or my upbringing or my parents or whatever. And you're not the only, like a lot of my friends have said that,
right?
Because that stuff comes up in conversation, and some people can sense the angst sometimes, and and I could tell for a lot of my friends that like the picture wasn't making sense to them because I was leaving a large part of my story out.
Right. Yeah, and that's a really good way to put it because again, I'm not like, oh, I knew he was gay the whole time. Like I had no idea about that, but what you just said, like the picture didn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for a lot of my friends, whenever I did finally like give them the full story and not hide any of the details, they were like, oh,
right.
It all makes sense now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's been great to be able to do that because, not only has that made me feel better about myself and not feel like I have to hide anything or that I'm like running from my past in a way. I'm kind of like owning my past now more. Yeah, like I said, not only does that make me feel better about myself, but it makes my connections with the friends I already have better because, they see it makes sense to them. They see the whole picture. So, I mean, I don't blame you for thinking, suggesting not to read the comments, because that's kind of a general rule of thumb when you put out anything on the internet, especially if you have a big following, because you can assume there's a number of trolls and haters out there.
Right.
And people just trying to like talk shit. And so I expected a little bit of that, not from like my audience or whatever, my like friends and whatnot, but you're just putting something out there on the internet, and you can't be surprised if you get some backlash, especially about something, semi-controversial about, sexual identity or whatever. But I was really surprised to have not gotten, seriously, not one negative comment on my post or anything that I shared relative to that. And so that was really encouraging to me. And I've tried to like express that to reiterate that point, to be like, hey, like this should be seen as a good thing. Like I understand I have a tremendous privilege in the fact that I haven't gotten that much in comparison to other people. Some people have been subjected to more hate. And of course I have in the past, but this is really just relative to me coming out now.
Right.
And what I shared on the internet, however many months ago. And I think that should be encouraging to the climbing world. Be like, look, there's not that much negativity, or there's no negativity coming from the climbing world. And I think that shows or speaks volumes to the community we have in climbing. And so that's what I've tried to.
I understand your reluctance to be like, it's all fine, because it's obviously not.
It's not.
And
for
other
a lot of
people's
people.
experience are different.
And it hasn't been for me for a lot of my life. So don't be fooled.
Right. But you got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just because I will look through them too. And it was just like, boom, 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 boom. I mean, the emojis were
just rainbows and hearts and tears
all that
and
shit.
Yeah, just all the
good
things.
Ones. But yeah, I mean, it was nice, and like again, to be a part of it was nice. And the funny thing is my brain, and I think probably most people, it was like, okay, here was this big event, and Jordan's out, and then it's like, okay.
Yeah, thankfully, as it should
like,
be,
okay,
right?
Because
nothing really changes. And that's the response. That's the response I want.
And it's like I was talking to Laura Sabrin, and that was the thing too. Is when they started talking about being binary to people, that was my point. I was like, well, just because you put a name on it doesn't mean you're a different person. And that was with you too. It's like you're just the same person that I was talking to the day before, messaging with like 3 weeks before is when we were talking to you then.
You're right. At the core, I'm the same person, but the person I portray to the world around me is different.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And I think I can notice that for myself, but I've gotten that feedback from friends noticing,
right.
Just a difference in like a lack of angst or like, just more easygoing, not as like on guard really, I guess, or whatever. And so,
how's it changed for you, like living on the road and your climbing then?
Well, I mean, it kind of did what I intended it to do and like free me up to give myself a little bit more fully to climbing and get more satisfaction out of it. Not, thinking or dealing as with this thing going on in the background. So, yeah, I mean, my climbing's been great. I've been having the time of my life since then, really. Had a good season in Yosemite. We talked about the triple a little bit. I didn't get to free climb anything. It was too hot and I was there too late, but whatever. I moved up to Tuolumne afterwards. I just did Peace. Freaking awesome up there. And Tuolumne's great as it is, but yeah, climbing on that route and on Medlicott with the view. Yeah, it was just great. And so I had never fallen in love with a route that much before or known I could enjoy a sport route.
Well, that could be good or bad.
My friend Jeremy was like, dude, it's all downhill from here. Right. Because you're never going to fall in love with the route as much. And it's true. I've been in Rifle for the past week being like, what do I want to climb? All these suck. No, I'm just kidding. There's plenty of routes. Plenty of cool routes here.
I've just been totally kidding.
I've just been trying, trying to be a little bit more intentional with like the projects that I choose for myself and making sure I'm really psyched about them and not just doing them because I think I should or something.
Right, or you should hit the grade, or this is the next thing that I'm supposed to do after I do that.
Exactly, because that's kind of my mode as a climber, which I think can, having like a methodical approach to climbing like that can be really beneficial, but it can also like sandbag you in ways. And like, for example, I was like trying to look for a 13C last year while I was here because I'd like done some easier 513s and I was like, all right, I'm ready to try something harder. I was like, what's the best 13C? And everybody's like, Apocalypse. And I was like, sick, sign me up. And I like tried that thing for a while and I was like getting closer and I was eventually just like, I don't think I actually like this route. Like, why am I climbing on this route? It's like just because people told me to, because that was like the next
and it's
box.
The grade.
Yeah, it's the grade. But ultimately, I realized like, not the experience I'm looking for. So I've gone elsewhere.
You're stuck here in Rifle for a week, just climbing on these terrible routes.
Well,
what's going on? What's your winter or your fall look like?
Well, I mean, so the main reason I'm here is to climb with Mark.
Okay.
I would love to be able to, for this to be my first of 6 weeks here, like last summer, or like Mark is gonna do after I leave tomorrow. But I'm actually on my way to Boulder to climb a Scott in Rocky Mountain National Park, which I think we talked about at the beginning, right? But Mark, our partnership has changed since he completed his goal of doing what he wanted to do on the free rider, and I completed my goals as well. And yeah, it's been like a bit of a transition for Mark and I, kind of like growing out of each other as climbing partners in a way, in the sense that, you know, I couldn't have done something like the Triple Crown with Mark. And even my last, my first attempt at Golden Gate, when Mark jugged for me on Halloween, at the end of that, I was like, I don't think I can ask Mark to do this for me again, you know?
Right.
Like I felt really bad. It pushed him pretty hard too. And so yeah, our climbing is changing. Our friendship, of course, is just as strong as ever, but we're kind of dropping into more like casual, friendly climbing partners, which makes more sense, sport climbing. So yeah, I'm mainly here since we haven't gotten to climb all season together, and I've been off in Yosemite doing my thing while he's out climbing in Ten Sleep and wherever. So yeah, here to just...
And you guys are going to get tattoos together tomorrow.
Yeah. Not matching ones, I should say. Not
matching ones. You do have matching tattoos, though, don't you?
Well, we do, actually, yeah. Which happened this time last year after climbing in Rifle. That's a pretty funny story, but...
Getting tattoos during the pandemic. Bold.
During the pandemic, yeah.
Bold.
Well, I got my first in, last year, before coming out, last year in Ten Sleep was it was an experimental year for me, in the sense that I got my ear pierced. I let my friend Elise pierce my ear in the campground in Ten Sleep. I let Emily Harrington cut my hair. I got a tattoo. I was really trying to practice things that helped me not give a fuck about what other people thought, you know?
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Jordan for getting in touch, hanging out in his van, actually. We did that in Jordan's van, not in my camper. And I don't know how he comes across to you guys, but the dude is actually pretty freaking humble. I think he has even like a little inferiority complex, which is undeserved or unwarranted, if you will. I mean, the guy in the short time he's been climbing has done some incredible things. And I really think he's just getting started, because it's hard to carve your niche in the modern age. Shit's been done, you know? It's not necessarily a blank canvas on which to paint your career. You got to find your place and you got to find your niche. But I think we'll see more great things from Jordan. So he'll be back. When I do episode like 1000, we'll do it with Jordan Cannon. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well. It is September, although that's a bit of a myth. Now that climate change has taken hold here in the West anyway, September's still hot, although the nights are cold, which helps. Enjoying the fall, the most bountiful climbing season, I do believe. Is there anyone that doesn't think the fall is the best? I don't think so. I think it's a pretty standard notion. So get out there, have some fun. Of course, check your knots.
So when it comes to poking cows, well, that's your business. But as far as climbing goes, nobody has you covered head to toe like Black Diamond. Check them out. Check them out at blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop. And though I might have gone too far this time, at the moment, Black Diamond is still a proud sponsor of the Enormocast.